Hello and welcome back to Lombardi Sweep, your newest favorite podcast all about the Green Bay Packers. Today should be a pretty positive show, I think. We are going to be looking at the offense position by position, talk about the good, the bad, who's a free agent, position needs, etc. Obviously a very good offensive year, so I think there's going to be more good than bad to say. But we are three again this week with Trevor Land, Luke Reimer joining me. I am Zach Bruner. Janet is still boiling water, so she has something to drink down in Texas. So needless to say, she has a couple of larger things to worry about. But we will get her war stories when she comes back, which I anticipate will be sooner rather than later. But for today, it'll be us three talking about the offense. And we may as well start with an easy position here. We'll start with quarterback. Obviously, three players, Aaron Rodgers, Tim Boyle, and the golden boy, Jordan Love. We have Tim Boyle, who is a restricted free agent. Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, obviously, for sure will be coming back, unfortunately. Unfortunately to the latter. But there's one obvious talking point. Aaron Rodgers won MVP. And it's an interesting position to talk about just because that's the obvious talking point. But Luke, I'll just throw a question to you, and that's how I think we should go about talking about quarterback at least. But talking about Aaron Rodgers first, obviously, MVP season. In your opinion, was this the best season he has had as a pro yet?
I think it's really tough to make that argument, but if I did, I would say, yeah, I'm on that side. I know everyone will bring up, 2011, 2015. I think you could argue against those being that, Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, James Jones, they're like those receiving cores are stacked. This one, I mean, we've been talking about it for, what is this, our fourth episode? I think in every episode we mentioned that the Packers don't have a solid number 2 receiver last year. And so just to see what he did, obviously Devonte Adams is a stud, but without, a consistent number 2, Rob Tonyan's great receiving tight end, but just two receiving weapons isn't huge. But for Rodgers putting up 48 touchdowns last year with basically Devonte Adams and Robert Tonyan, as the consistent, reliable guys, is pretty impressive. I also liked a lot of what Rodgers did this year, throwing the ball. I know that's kind of weird to say, but I feel like when he went down with that collarbone injury, some of like the zip came off his ball in recent years. And this year it kind of looked like he was back to that 2014, just zipping it around, putting the ball wherever he wanted to.
Yeah, I would say it was his best season ever too. And you kind of look at who's around him. His second leading receiver was MVS, who only caught 33 of 63 targets. And as a second leading receiver, can even eclipse 700 receiving yards. So when you have all that, I mean, you have to give it to him. I think you absolutely have to. He's obviously Tunyan's a good player, but he's making him look outstanding, like an elite tight end. And I mean, anytime he can throw 48 touchdowns and only 5 picks, I mean, that is just absolutely ludicrous in itself. So yeah, I'd say it's his best season.
I'm on that side as well. I think he just did so much. Obviously, the stats speak for themselves, and I do have a list here I'll go over just to say how good he was. But there's so many little things that he did that don't pop up in stats. And he legitimately, like we talked about last week, made every single person on the field better. And I was sort of coming for him 2 years ago. I thought was his worst season, first year in the Matt LaFleur system. He looked bad at times 2 years ago. This past year, he really turned it around. I think a lot of the credit does go to the offensive line just because he didn't get hit this year. He stayed healthy for the first time all year long, but he was, to your point, on point. Like his throws were perfect. He was making the right reads, which was a problem 2 years ago, but he was so good. But just to list where he was in terms of other starting quarterbacks in the league, these are his ranks compared to quarterbacks with at least 300 dropbacks, which is less than average, but just, a good measuring point. He was number 1 in touchdowns, obviously, with 48. He was tied for the fewest interceptions with 5. and that was tied with Joe Burrow, Gardner Minshew, and Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously, they played a lot less. He was number 1 in completion percentage, 70.7. Number 1 in adjusted completion percentage, 81.3. Number 1 in passer rating, 121.5. Number 1 Pro Football Focus grade, 94.5. And most of all, he was number 1 in our hearts. Like for sure. He was honestly, the most impressive stat to me, probably. Tim Boyle played 22 snaps. Aaron Rodgers played. It would have been great to have Tim Boyle play more in the fourth quarters because we were up by so much, obviously. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers is fantastic this year. So I guess what?
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you're mentioned in the same conversation as Gardner Minshew, you must be doing something good.
Yeah, that has to make Rodgers feel good. Like just in the same breath. That's got to be up there for accolades for sure.
And let's not forget, as like an MVP, arguably greatest quarterback of all time, he got engaged and it didn't come out till after the season. Like in an MVP speech where half the people who were watching thought he was joking. That might arguably be the most impressive thing he's done all year.
That was, because I was watching that live too. And I like everybody was like, wait. Like, did I hear that? I had no clue if I heard it right. Like, that was wild. Good for him. Congratulations, I suppose. The other talking point for these quarterbacks going into the offseason, in my opinion, we could talk about if Jordan Love's going to get traded or should he. I think we've done that a little bit, and I think we all have the same opinion. But Tim Boyle, restricted free agent. So, Luke, in your opinion, do you think there's two ways to think about this? Should the Packers bring back Tim Boyle, or do you think they need to bring back Tim Boyle? Like, do you think Jordan Love's going to be enough or progressed enough next year where he can be the reliable number 2 should something happen to Rodgers?
Yeah, we talk about Jordan Love being traded. I can talk on that in a minute, but I think the thing is you almost, I think, need to keep Tim Boyle on the roster just because he's been a part of this offense or been a part of the the scheme. He should know how to run the scheme. I think backup quarterbacks always come with a big if the starting quarterback goes down. I don't think, especially with Matt LaFleur, he's still kind of a rookie coach that you want to bring in a whole new backup to learn a whole offense. And Rodgers goes on week 1 and then the whole season goes to shit, whatever. So I think that they need to keep Tim Boyle on the roster. I'm not at practice, but we talked about Jordan Love didn't know how to throw the ball coming into the professional league. I can't imagine 1 year not playing one professional game is going to boost that potential, boost that development at all. So I think, you need to keep Tim Boyle on this roster. He has a little repertoire with maybe the number 2 receiver goes down, whatever. I think Tim Boyle should stay.
He should. And money-wise, he's not going to be asking for much, and I don't think anybody else wants him. But it also hurts because, I'm seeing on the free agents that are unrestricted, and boy, would I love a Tyrod Taylor or RG3 or Blake Bortles. I'd love those guys so much, but unfortunately, I think it's got to be Tim Boyle. He knows the offense. I don't know any other quarterback who'd come into this situation as a free agent unless they're so bad they shouldn't have a job anyways, in which case I don't know why you don't just keep Tim Boyle. So, yeah, I think you keep him, no-brainer.
There's a lot of people who do talk about how the backup quarterback's one of the most important positions on the team, not just because if they come in, they have to be reliable, but just to be another set of eyes. What I would want to know is how much of an impact he actually does have on Rodgers in terms of seeing the field and stuff. Obviously, it's not anything we're going to know. It's not anything we're going to find out. If he does actually help Rodgers in the actual game, I think he needs to be back. I don't think the Packers need to keep him with the thought of if Rodgers goes down, we need a reliable person, just because I think if Rodgers goes down, we're fucked no matter what, in my personal opinion. Unless we get like Ryan Fitzpatrick to back him up, in which case then we're good. we may need Rodgers to go down at that point. But unless I just don't think. I think we need to bring him back and then, let Jordan Love show what he can do in the preseason. Granted, we have a preseason, which I'm sure we will. But I really, really hope we don't go into the actual regular season with 3 quarterbacks. Just because I feel like I would much rather have a 6th receiver or something like that. Or somebody, not Jordan Love. I don't know. Not a 3rd quarterback. It just doesn't help us.
RG3, man. Rodgers is going to get hurt in the NFC Championship game. RG3 is going to bring us back, holding the Lombardi. It's going to be a scene.
Do you guys remember?
It's going to be a scene. It's going to be a scene.
Do you guys remember maybe 5-6 years ago when they brought Vince Young in for training camp?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do.
That was awesome. That was a great time.
Was it?
Yeah. He got screwed over so bad. He should have made the team. He actually looked good. Okay, and for a guy that was in a Jeff Fisher offense, that's like an elite level what he was doing in spring training. So
I guess that's true. I just want to look really quick at the free agent quarterbacks just to see if there is somebody legitimate we could bring in. I just don't think there's
much there.
What would you think about Joe Flacco?
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
Yes.
I'm being serious. I don't know. I think I don't know. Again, I think it goes to the point that we're fucked no matter what. What?
Unless your name is Frank Gore, if you were on the Jets last year, you should not be on an NFL roster. I'm sorry. It's just that team is horrible.
I like the way you're thinking. Frank Gore could probably be the backup quarterback. I think we could just run Wildcat the entire time.
The thing with Joe Flacco, too, is, he's been known for those, just dumping off short out routes. Devonte Adams thrives at short out routes and then making a guy miss and getting upfield.
I don't think Flacco's ego would have him throw those, though. I think he'll fake it and launch it to MVS about 80 yards down the field. I don't think Joe Flacco's willing to check down. He certainly wasn't this year. He definitely wasn't this year.
So if Aaron Rodgers is out, that just means a whole lot of unknown fun. That's Madden out there. We're playing Madden.
Let's bring Hundley back. Let's bring him back. He's a free agent, man.
I'll refuse that one. Okay. Why did Blake Bortles? We need Blake Bortles. This guy thrives when it gets cold, when there's snow on the ground. We said it time and time again with my last podcast. When it's December, Blake Bortles is damn near undefeated. When he's down, when all the adversity is coming on him, when he's down behind the count, that's where he thrives. If he comes in, tell me you're not going to be doubting him, because that's when he's going to perform.
He thrives behind the count because he's never ahead of the count to begin with. That's why.
Doesn't need to. He almost beat the Patriots. That's pretty good.
Did you guys hear the story of how he tried to stop dipping by buying a Tesla?
What? Yeah,
because he's making too many runs to the gas station, so he bought a Tesla so he could coordinate in or whatever that to not go to the gas station. It's a really good story.
That's my quarterback. I love him. I had one of his former linemen at UCF on the last podcast. I can't remember if he said the quote or if we found the quote on some article, but if Blake Bortles wasn't playing football, he said he'd be ripping cigs at some construction yard. That's amazing. I love that man. Oh, God.
Fit right into the Green Bay culture.
He would.
Maybe. I don't know. Blake Bortles in a Green Bay uniform. It just hurts the eyes. It just hurts the eyes.
Because it's too pretty.
Close your eyes and imagine then. Just close them. Is there anything else to say about this quarterback group before we move on to something that actually needs analysis? Okay. So, running backs. Obviously, going into the offseason here, there's going to be a lot of movement one way or another. We had 4 main running backs this year. We had Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Tyler Ervin, A.J. Dillon. 3 of them are free agents. And it came out yesterday or today or something. The Dolphins actually have interest in Aaron Jones. That was one thing I was wondering about, how much interest he would actually garner in free agency. But if a team like the Dolphins, who has a lot of money, is interested in him, I think that means he's gone. And then Jamal Williams, obviously, there's been zero talks about Jamal Williams' contract from anybody, including him. So who knows? Yeah, Luke, we can just talk about the running back position as a whole, I guess. If you had to give a grade to the running back position this year, the committee as a whole, what would the grade be? And what do you think the Packers need to do going forward?
I'm not going to be very exciting here. I'll just throw in a B for the committee. I think Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams complement each other very well. I think that's why, the receiving and the running game worked the last 2 years. I mean, Matt LaFleur, it's not a secret that he wants to run the ball. He wants to get that run game going. And Aaron Jones, when he hits a hole, man, he hits it hard. He hits it fast, and we saw that, against the Rams in the playoffs right after halftime, ripped that 60-yarder or whatever it was. But yeah, like a team like the Dolphins, who seems like they're, 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 skill players away, maybe another offensive lineman, whatever, from being somewhat of a contender. I don't see why they wouldn't overpay to get Aaron Jones on their team. Like you said, Zach, that makes me think that Aaron Jones is not going to be with us next year. Me and you have talked about it, that Jamal Williams is a stud. He's a great pass blocker, great receiver, runs great routes for a running back, which I think is huge in an Aaron Rodgers offense. And I still like A.J. Dillon. I know that, it was like, what the hell are we drafting a running back in the second round for? But I still, once it comes winter, once Aaron Jones is playing in Miami, Jamal Williams needs a break. A.J. Dillon is going to get a couple of those short yardage and just plow people over into the end zone.
Yeah, for me, I don't really understand why the Dolphins are interested in him, because Myles Gaskin looked amazing, and they need receivers, so I would assume an Allen Robinson. But to your point, for the running backs overall, I'd probably give it an A, maybe a low A, just because against Tampa Bay it didn't end out too well. But everybody has bad games. But the stat that I found interesting, for me, I don't think you keep Aaron Jones at all. I would like to have him, but to be honest, I think he's really overrated, considering the offensive line we have. And I found a stat that Jamal Williams, the past 2 seasons, he's had a catch percentage of 87 and 89%. Aaron Jones has never in his career ever eclipsed 75%. I mean, that's a huge difference. And Jones, what he can do in the passing game, like he's not ineffective. You never are sad that he's on the field in the passing play, but he just doesn't do that as well. He's a better runner than Williams, but when you put in the blocking and the receiving, like you said, Luke, I just Aaron Jones, we'd like to have him back, but I don't think there's any use for him or worth at any amount of money over maybe even $5 million with how our salary cap is going.
Yeah, I completely agree. And criticize the pick if you want, but the Packers drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round last year for a reason. And Dillon's not a receiver. Dillon's not a good pass protector. Same thing can be said about Aaron Jones. So if Aaron Jones comes back, you're talking about another early down running back who is going to be splitting snaps with someone who you just drafted in the second round. It just doesn't make much sense to me. And yeah, to your point, Luke, we have been talking about it all the time. I think Jamal Williams is a better all-around player. He does everything very well. He's infinitely better in pass protection than Aaron Jones. Is not even close. Aaron Jones hasn't really improving even since his rookie year in pass protection, which, yeah, I don't know why the Dolphins want him. The Dolphins are very set on wanting a franchise running back, and I don't really get it because they did extremely well with Myles Gaskin. When Selvin Ahmed came in, he did very well. Like they found really good production out of guys who we've never heard of And if you can continue to do that, I mean, that's the way you want to do it. I'm very, very against ever paying a running back in terms of trying to form a championship roster, even if it's Saquon Barkley, if it's Christian McCaffrey. I just don't think there's much use for it, which, again, that makes Jamal Williams more appealing just because I don't know what the market is for him right now. So I would really like both of them back. If I had to give the running backs a grade, like, I don't know, A, B, something around there. I think they did exactly what they needed to do. I think the offensive line, to your guys' point, bailed them out a lot. I mean, I guess I do have the stats here. I have offensive line stats. They were number one in stuff rate, the offensive line. So running backs were never going to get stuffed. They always had room to find running lanes. And then adjusted line yards, they were fifth. So the offensive line produced the fifth most rushing yards for their running backs in the entire league, made them look very good. I think anyone can run very well in that situation. One player I do want to talk about of the group, though, is Tyler Ervin. I was really impressed by him. I don't know what your guys' opinion was, but I thought he added something to the offense that's needed. If I can imagine a lot of the audience are also Wisconsin Badger fans. And the Badgers under Paul Chryst, like, they run the best jet sweeps of any team I've ever seen in my life. For some reason, it doesn't matter who they hand off like some motion to. It goes for 10, 15, 20 yards, even if the guy's running in slow motion. I think that's something Tyler Ervin can do for the Packers. And after he got hurt and stuff, the Packers brought in Tavon Austin maybe to be that role, and they just never really panned out. Would you be, how do I phrase this? Would either of you be interested in actually bringing him back on obviously a minimum salary, just because I don't think he's going to garner anything more? Or do you think that's somebody we should try to find in the draft?
Bringing back Tyler Ervin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been a big component of, even if you don't give the guy the jet sweep, the linebacker's eyes have to be on the jet sweep, creating open lanes. So I don't necessarily think you need to bring back Tyler Ervin, but you need to keep that position there.
Yeah, the fact that the Packers don't run it more just baffles me, because they started doing it pretty regularly, not this past season, but the season before, near the end of the season. Obviously, you can't run it every other play. That's not how it works. But when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, when you have an offensive line like they have, granted, it won't be as good next year, but you have to respect the run game. You have to respect the sweep. And now you have Aaron Rodgers who can just keep it himself on a play action. I truly don't know how you stop that unless somebody makes a mistake. And for his money that he's going to garner, like you said, he's not going to have much interest. Not because he's not good, but because nobody's really seen him. Nobody's going to throw anything at him. I mean, you got to run it. But if you're not going to run it, don't bring him back, because I don't want to see him on the sidelines thinking about what we could do and just be yelling at my TV set. So,
yeah, exactly. To your point, yeah, there's no way to defend that. You could easily run, like, Matt LaFleur wants to be Sean McVay anyways. Sean McVay runs about 15 plays out of the exact same look. You could run jet motion and run a triple option. You could either give it to him, give it to A.J. Dillon up the gut, or throw it to Devonte like on a slant or something. Like, it'd be so easy to run. It would be impossible to stop just because of the playmakers you have at all three positions. It'd be nice. It would be nice.
Yeah.
So let's go.
I think that, whatever, but I think jet motion, or even just motion in general, needs to be established almost on every single play, just to get the defense on their toes. It doesn't hurt, moving a receiver from the outside, bring him in the slot back to the outside. Then they think something's going on over there, you throw it over there, whatever. I think it just creates a lot of confusion, and you can still run whatever play you want out of motion. But I think bringing back Tyler Ervin is not a huge thing, because I think there are a lot of athletes in the NFL who can do the same exact thing he does.
And that's fair. Like, all you need is someone who is a playmaker, essentially. Like, they can make plays with the ball. It would be nice to get, like, Packers haven't had this in forever. It'd be nice to have a legit returner, like a legit playmaker, someone who's electric with the ball. I understand kick returns aren't as common now with all the rules in place, but having someone like a Cordero Patterson, who's a risk to take it out, who can play offense, like play some role on the offense, that'd be so nice.
Yeah.
Huh. So if we assume Aaron Jones is gone, which I think is a pretty safe assumption, and let's say the Packers don't re-sign Jamal Williams to do that third down receiving role, would you guys not prefer? Because I don't think you can draft a receiver like that, or at least someone capable in pass protection. Is there another free agent available, Luke, that you think the Packers could kick the tires on and maybe bring in?
I think me and Trevor have the same answer, and I think Trevor likes to talk about him a little bit. So I'll let Trevor go.
No, I'm just happy we're able to seamlessly bring him in. The boy, Todd Gurley.
Right.
Stop.
But no, in all seriousness, actually, I think you could actually go to the draft. This running back draft, I've written about it. Luke, you talked about those two guys from UNC are absolute studs, and they're like 6 through 8 in the running back rankings. Obviously, you're not going to pick anybody up in the first 3 rounds, but when you have guys like Trey Sermon and Chuba Hubbard, obviously they have their minuses. But when you have those guys ranked 10 to 11 among running backs, I mean, maybe you could get somebody late. I don't know, but there are certainly a lot of free agents among running backs that you could take a chance on, because there are going to be some guys that fall through the cracks.
Yeah, in all seriousness, too, here going on the other hand of Trevor drafting, if we want a veteran guy, I know we talked about last week, but James White has been, his name's been thrown out there a little bit. I think with Aaron Rodgers, the stage he's in his NFL career, it would make more sense to bring in a veteran than to try to draft and develop someone, and James White has shown he's got like some crazy, like the 3rd most Super Bowl touchdowns of all time, or something wild like that, who's made a living off of catching passes from Tom Brady. So, I mean, I don't think that would be that terrible of a player to come in and fill that Jamal Williams 3rd down role.
I think you can draft a receiver, like a receiving running back. I just don't think you can get someone who's ready to make the right read in pass protection. That's my biggest worry, and we need someone like that's the biggest hurdle rookies have, and that's why rookie running backs don't always play right away, because the quarterback is going to get killed if they're in there, and obviously if Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust them, they're definitely not going to be on the field. So if there is someone capable, like maybe Antonio Gibson from this past year, who was taken right behind A.J. Dillon, that we passed on. I'm not salty at all. But otherwise, those players don't really come around very often. I'm looking at the free agency running backs right now. I think James White's a really good call. Obviously, ties with Wisconsin. It's going to make a lot of Packer fans happy. I think Rex Burkhead is a similar type of player that I think could be fine. Patriot system, I guess, again. Maybe Carlos Hyde.
I love Rex Burkhead, because I know we talked about on our fantasy football show, but he's always the guy who ends up on my fantasy team when all my running backs go down, and I just keep rooting for him. So I'd be very on board with getting Rex Burkhead on the team.
What would you guys think about, like, obviously this is not going to happen, but like a guy like almost like a Marlon Mack. Obviously Jonathan Taylor is going to take over in Indianapolis. He's not a horrible blocker, obviously coming off a bad injury, but I don't see him going back to Indianapolis. Does he kind of fit the mold too, or is that just a little bit different?
Short answer, I don't know. I would need to watch more of him on 3rd downs. I know he came off the field a lot just because they had someone like Nyheim Hines. I don't know if he's great in pass protection or not. If he's at least average, I think that'd be great if he doesn't garner any money. I'm worried he would garner a decent amount more than minimum, and I don't want to spend that selfishly on a player who doesn't already know the system.
What about just going out and getting Aaron Rodgers' college teammate Marshawn Lynch out of the fan-controlled football league?
That'd be
awesome. Skittles.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would be so on board with having Marshawn Lynch. Just as a locker room guy, I'm fully on board. What would you guys?
He doesn't seem.
I don't know what this guy's going to garner for money, but what would you think about like a Le'Veon Bell after what we saw with him with Kansas City?
I really like Le'Veon Bell. I think, when obviously he's not at his peak, what he was in Pittsburgh, but I think when he was at his peak, he's kind of what Jamal Williams would be at Jamal Williams' peak, if that makes sense. Like, that's like the type of player I think Le'Veon Bell is. And he's a veteran. He's been in the playoffs how many times? I think he's a rushing leader. He has skill to, give him the ball when we need to give him the ball. So I'd be totally on board with Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, with Le'Veon Bell, I'd be on board. Unfortunately, I just feel like he's one of those guys that still thinks he's worth top money. And he's just not. He'd be a great fit, but no disrespect to him, but I think his ego is way too big. I don't think there's a chance in hell that he takes anything less than even maybe like $4 million a year, even though he doesn't deserve it. Maybe he'll go to Miami. Who knows? Maybe he'll be their franchise running back. So
I could actually see that. I could talk about running backs more. I just don't think it's that interesting to talk about free agent running backs right now, and we will do that in a couple of weeks. So let's move on to the offensive line. I will be biased just because I am an offensive line guy. I do think they were the most important part of this entire offense this year. They were phenomenal. I do have some stats here. They were tied in number 1 for sacks allowed with 9. However, they were number 6 in adjusted sack rate, which I think speaks to Aaron Rodgers' ability to extend plays, move the pocket, do all of that, which is pretty remarkable. Tied for number 1 in hits allowed. They only allowed Aaron Rodgers to get hit 10 other times other than the sacks. Number 1, pass blocking efficiency. And the stats I brought up earlier, number 5 in adjusted line yards in the running game. Number 1 in stuff rate, which leads me to believe like anyone can be that goal line guy. They don't necessarily need a huge tank. And there are stats I looked up that Aaron Jones was just as good of a power runner as A.J. Dillon as well, which is a little bit concerning. But yeah, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers was also pressured the 3rd fewest out of quarterbacks with 23.7%. He was just amazing. David Bakhtiari was the number 1 pass blocking graded offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus. Corey Linsley was the number 1 center. They just had playmakers all over. And speaking of Corey Linsley, the report came out today, I guess, that there's been no talks of an extension. I don't think it's that surprising. It shouldn't be surprising. And I think this is the 4th show and maybe the 3rd time I've brought it up that you can hide a lot of weaknesses at center anyway. So I'll just talk about Corey Linsley here for a second, this situation, then I'll throw it to you guys talking about the offensive line and also talking about the Bakhtiari injury. Where do we go from there? But Corey Linsley, everyone talked about how he was the best center in the league. Very true. I thought he was a very, very good player. I think he's going to continue to be a very good player. He turns 30 before the season, which is a big magic number when it comes to contracts. If we do franchise Corey Linsley, which would also make sense if, there's no talks of an extension. If we franchise him, it's a little north of $9 million, which ranks 4th in positional salary, and that's current. So if someone else gets broken off and gets paid a bunch this offseason, that would go up. But if we franchise him on his 30th year, age 30 season here, and he's not the number 1 ranked center, we're probably going to get a nice deal going forward. So I think that makes a lot of sense with Corey Linsley if we want to bring him back. However, you can hide a lot of weaknesses at center. He was the number 1 center because of Elton Jenkins, because of Patrick, because of Turner, because of the guards he plays next to. When you're in that zone blocking scheme, you're doubling guys pretty much every play. He also doesn't face a zero technique much at all. That's just not the current NFL. So I think we could probably draft a center that is more than capable. I, however, am still very, very much afraid that we're going to move Elton Jenkins there if we don't bring Corey Linsley back. And if that's the case, we might as well throw in the season. I really think that would doom us, not because Jenkins wouldn't be good, but because he's so good that we can't put him in the middle of the line. So after that rant, with that being said, Trevor, I think the price for Corey Linsley, I think $9 million per year would be the minimum at this point. Again, that's about fourth in the rank. At that price, do you think it warrants bringing him back? Would you franchise him? Would you try to draft somebody? Would you bring in a free agent? What do you think the Packers need to do for the center position?
Yeah, man, it's tough because if you go for the drafting position, I mean, you're really playing with fire. You can find some great guys, but there is just no sure pick, and that's what I'm so afraid of. And the Packers notoriously, when they need a offensive lineman, screw it up. Like they'll
That's
get
fair.
some great guys later in the draft, but Derek Sherrod, like nobody's heard his name in like 20 years.
Jason
He was that bad. Jason Spriggs, yeah, we traded up for him. I don't trust it, so I think the money is right. It's not something I love to do, but I think the cuts can be made to make it work. And going to the offensive line as a whole, I think if there was one play this season for me that kind of epitomized just how good these guys were, was against the Rams in the divisional playoffs. Rodgers in his own end zone, just sitting in the pocket, just chilling, like he's at the beach, just sitting there. I thought for sure he was going to get sacked for a safety. Me and probably thousands upon thousands of other people were yelling at him to get rid of the damn ball. He just felt no pressure. He got no pressure. Zinged an absolute bullet, got a first down. But you look at the confidence not only they have, but that he has in them. Is it a far-fetched to think that contributed to him playing well too? No. So, I think you got to do whatever you can to keep that offensive line as close as you can because, these guys are good and Aaron Rodgers trusts them, and that means a lot. We know not to piss him off again, that's for sure. So,
Yeah, I think I'm on the train where I think we need to keep Corey Linsley. Do whatever it takes to keep him. I don't even want to say that, but do in your best to keep him because Zach, like you said, I feel moving Elton Jenkins to center is just kind of wasting Elton Jenkins at that point. Trevor, you said you don't know what you're going to get out of a rookie center. That feels right too. The Packers were, what was it, 5 points away from the Super Bowl this year, 6 points, whatever it was. I think you need to keep what worked the best together. I know we're not going to have Bakhtiari till end of the season playoffs, but if they can find a serviceable player to fit that role, if we can keep that offensive line together into the playoffs, I think that run is still somewhat alive. But I think you keep Corey Linsley just so you don't have to waste that talent of Elton Jenkins.
Yeah, I'm super, super torn on this. And again, I usually go for the lineman side. I think it also, they call it the center, the anchors, the offensive line. I mean, that's very true. He's a signal caller. He's all of that. And the Packers seemingly have done very little to support Aaron Rodgers over the years. And there's three players that really are connected to the quarterback, right? It's the left tackle. Packers just made him the highest paid. That's really good. However, he's not going to be playing for most of next year. So he's not going to be there. The number one wide receiver, Devonte Adams, obviously is locked down. That's all good. But then the center, I mean, they have to be in sync. They have to have a good relationship because the center can really screw up the quarterback in a lot of ways. It probably would piss Rodgers off. I don't want to do that, obviously. I really don't want to sign Corey Linsley to a multi-year deal just because he is 30. Centers can play a little bit longer because they don't need to be as athletic. I understand that. But if it's going to be $9-10 million per year, I think it's such a waste of money. And Packers, not that I want to base success on 2 draft picks, but you look at arguably the 2 best centers in the league. It's Corey Linsley and J.C. Tretter, who are the Packers' 2 last centers. Maybe they can find another really good center. I also don't want to waste training camp time developing chemistry between the offensive line and chemistry between the center and Rodgers. So there's so many things. I'm really torn. I don't think there's a right answer. All I know is I think the wrong answer is to extend him for a bunch of years. Just because once it gets to year 34, 33, 34 years old. You're playing with fire. Like, he's not going to be very durable. He's going to get rolled up on. He's going to be a waste of money. That's my worry, I guess. Talking about the linemen as a whole, in terms of free agents and stuff, obviously Corey Linsley unrestricted. Lane Taylor, who I love, obviously got hurt week 1. I think he's a really, really, really good guard. Got hurt, out for the year, unrestricted free agent. I feel really positive he's going to be a cheap re-sign. I think he's going to come back at a discount, maybe a 1-year prove-it deal. If he stays healthy, he'll get a big contract. If the Packers can sign him for guard, I think we're good to go. And I guess my personal preference is I would rather have him than Corey Linsley. And then obviously Rick Wagner's an unrestricted free agent now. Packers just cut him. There's a chance they could re-sign him cheaper. Not much cheaper, just because of the amount of salary they had to eat, but he's also out there. Luke, what's the one position, I guess, you would rather have the Packers go after in free agency on the offensive line instead of draft? Because obviously we're going to draft linemen, but if you had to choose one of the positions on the offensive line, would you rather they go after in free agency, or do you think they can stay put?
I think if you're going to go after someone, I think you should take a tackle, especially if you can get a veteran tackle like we did for Rick Wagner earlier in last season, because edge rushers, these guys are just so good in the NFL. You know, we saw Jason Pierre-Paul just absolutely tear up the playoffs coming off the edge. The Giants won 2 Super Bowls with edge rushers. You know, these guys are so fast, so athletic. And Rodgers, you know, is very quick to make throws. So if you can get a veteran guy to just hold him off for 1, 2, 3 seconds, I think that's so important for the NFL and for the Packers right now. And I don't know if rookies can necessarily do that because, you know, the whole getting accustomed to the league, developing into whatever. So I think as long as you have Aaron Rodgers, I don't think you need to draft a tackle unless, you know, it's like the greatest tackle prospect of all time. Because these edge rushers are just so fucking good, man.
I think you go guard. Edge rushers are insane. For me, just looking at the free agents, obviously I am nowhere near. I'm not even going to act like I know half these guys. And Zach, I know you see 20,000 more things than I do on the offensive line. But just looking at the guards, a lot more names that I know of are popping up. A lot more free agents overall are popping up. That I'm seeing. Obviously, how their price is important, but you know, I just see with all these free agents at guard, I just see a really good opportunity to get somebody who's solid and would usually garner a decent amount of money, cheaper than usual. And then I think, you know, again, I'm not an expert on the offensive line, never will be. But then if you can get maybe one, who knows, maybe even 2 guys, depending on how you do, doubt it, but possibly, you know, I just look at guard, it's so deep, so many people out there, you know, maybe you get a guy who, you know, shouldn't be where he is, but hey, more for us, I guess.
For free agency, I do think I'd rather go guard. And you're right, it's definitely deeper. There's a lot more big names. There's a lot more veterans with, you know, playing time left in the tank at guard on free agency. I really want them to re-sign Lane Taylor just because I think he's the best out there, and I think he's going to be cheap. And I think he would. Tackle, we will get to the draft show in a few weeks or, you know, over a month away still. I really, really, really like Leatherwood out of Alabama. I think it's such a strong name. Like Leatherwood is like the most manly name of all time. If we can get him to play, he was left tackle at Alabama. If he converts to right tackle, I think he could be so good. Obviously, it would be a first-round pick. So, you know, you can question, should the Packers use a first-round pick on a tackle? There's a lot of arguments to be made. I kind of want them to, but I would fully understand the argument against that.
I think the thing is, too, for drafting offensive linemen, like just the college that he played to, I think is so important. You know, like out of Alabama, you're playing SEC football, you're blocking for these superstar running backs. Big Ten football, same thing, you know. I don't want a guy from the Big West Conference, who's a developmental project who could be the best of all time. I want the guy who's damn near played NFL football in college.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm just reading a couple of draft profiles I have on him because obviously the name is so amazing that it automatically bumps up how good he is, like 5 overall points, I guess,
100%.
without on Madden. Um, it's weird though. I don't know why, Zach. You probably know more than me. It seems in some profiles he's projected to go second, third round. Why is that? Because I thought for sure when he came back this year it would be first, especially with all the times I've heard of him.
Yeah, his name was in the draft pool last year, and he was pretty much a surefire first rounder. He was kind of in the same category as that list of tackles that went early anyway. He wasn't as good as Andrew Worth. He was still by far the best lineman in the draft and somehow slipped to Tom Brady. But honestly, he's for sure, Leatherwood's not going in the third round. If he makes it out of the first or the top 50 picks, I think that's a ridiculous slip. I think he makes some mental mistakes. The reason he went back was to shore up those mental mistakes in terms of like penalties and stuff like that, which I don't think is a big deal. I think you just learn that. I think it's experience, and I think he'd be fine. Like I said, he played left tackle at Alabama. I think he would be a really natural fit at right tackle to be a Lane Taylor-like right tackle who's good in pass protection, but an absolute bulldozer, an athletic guy. I'll send you a video of him later when he was a high schooler, just killing kids. He is so good. He is really, really good. But yeah, to your point. What?
Did you see the video of Vita Vea as a running back in high school? If you're listening to this,
God.
Vita Vea was a 300-pound running back in high school. Look it up. It's hilarious.
Side note, also hilarious. Glenn Davis, big baby from the Boston Celtics, was also a running back, and he was amazing, just killing kids. But to your point, Luke, I think I personally, if I was a scout for an NFL team right now, I don't want to draft a offensive lineman that didn't play for the SEC or for the Big Ten. There's obvious exceptions. There's a big one on the Packers. David Bakhtiari went to Colorado, I do believe, but still, most people could probably block a defensive lineman from Utah State and stuff like that. It's not that big of an accomplishment, to be completely honest. But if you're going head to head in practice with other Alabama players, like that's
Right.
the toughest competition you're going to face all year is in practice. Honestly, he's a stud. He's an absolute stud.
That's why I'm so surprised the Packers pass rush isn't better. You're going up against one of the best offensive lines. Like,
That's true.
Doesn't add up.
That's actually a good point. Anything else to say about the offensive line? They were very good.
Yeah, I mean, they might be the best in the NFL. I don't think there's much left to say about it.
Right. Let's go to wide receiver here. In terms of free agents, there is Alan Lazard's an exclusive rights restricted free agent, as is Malik Taylor, and then Tavon Austin. Allen Robinson's interesting. Obviously, by the way, Devin Funchess opted out of this season. He's coming back on a cheap contract next year. I was thinking about not Allen Robinson. I do think about him often as well. I would love for him to come to Green Bay. But I was thinking about Alan Lazard a lot today. Just what the Packers should do with him and what do I personally think of him, because I don't think my opinion of him's even fully thought out. I don't think I like him, to be completely honest. His routes suck. He's a good blocker, very good blocker. He does a lot of the little things well. 2 years ago, I don't know how you grade this, but 2 years ago, he was the top graded wide receiver in broken plays. So like those plays where Rodgers scrambles out and, they get off route, they have to work back to him, which shows his chemistry, shows his IQ, and I think that's really good and hard to teach. But I was also thinking, like, who would I compare Alan Lazard to? I think I'd compare him to Devin Funchess, and we have him for like $1 million. So Luke, I don't know what the market would be for Allen Lazard. I can't imagine it'd be a ton of money. But do you think the Packers need to match whatever offer there is and re-sign him?
No, of course not. Receiver is my favorite position in football. I absolutely love receivers. I think that with Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, you can almost put anyone maybe not anyone, but you can, if they have some sort of talent, you can put them there and they'd be productive.
Mm-hmm.
I think I disagree with you a little bit. I think Allen Lazard might get some money on the market because he played with Aaron. Yeah, because he played with Aaron Rodgers. He does, like, his good plays. They are nice, like his long posts for touchdowns. Otherwise, I definitely think Allen Lazard is replaceable. But I don't know if he's replaceable to the point where you're shelling out a lot of money to get a big upgrade over him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the free agents I'm looking at, I say you let Lazard walk. I think he'll get a decent amount of money. I say one of the guys you replace him with, not so much as a wide receiver, but so much as what we've talked about before. Jamal Agnew is a free agent for Detroit. As a returner, he's good. There's really no other way to put it. You have a new special teams coordinator. Who knows? Maybe even give you something as a wide receiver. I'm sure the Packers are going to draft somebody, and like we've said before, you have Aaron Rodgers. You don't need great wide receivers. So I think a guy who might be able to give you something as a wide receiver, but will give you something on special teams. I think if I'm picking between Lazard and looking at Taylor and looking at Agnew, I'm looking at Agnew and I'm making sure we get the deal done somehow. Because if I'm Agnew, there's who wants to stay in Detroit? Absolutely nobody. Absolutely nobody.
I probably should have started it out with this, just talking about the receiving core as a whole. So that's my bad, but we'll talk about free agents in a second. Obviously, Devonte Adams was the best wide receiver in football. 14 games, almost 1,400 yards, 18 touchdowns. He was unbelievable. If you want to hear us talk about Devonte Adams more, go to the last show where we gave out season awards for the Packers, and he was either the Offensive Player of the Year or the MVP for all of us. He was very good. That's all of the analysis you need on Devonte Adams. In terms of, you brought it up earlier, Trevor, Marquez Valdes-Scantling was the second leading receiver. He played all 16 games. The only wide receiver to play all 16 games this season. 690 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had 7 drops. He led the league in yards per reception with 20.9. He probably, out of the 7 drops, he probably dropped at least 3 touchdowns. A 55% reception percentage. I really want to believe in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We've talked about how Devonte Adams had drop problems his first few years in the league. Arguably worse drop problems. He had more targets as well. But Adams had as many as 10 drops, I believe, but he also had a couple 9 seasons. My whole thing with Valdes-Scantling is he also doesn't run very good routes, whereas Devonte Adams did. And then the other receivers aren't really worth talking about. I was a big Equanimeous St. Brown guy. He really hasn't panned out. I think injuries have hurt his development a lot just because he hasn't been able to put in the work. But he just looks like a Bambi out there learning to walk. He looks awkward. He's really long and lanky. And when we need a play, he's always there, but he never makes it. So I'm not out on him. I still think he has a lot of potential, but the time is running out. Obviously, he's back, so good for us. This is interesting. Luke, outside of Devonte Adams, so ranking the rest of the receiving core, the wide receiver core, what would be the grade you give to this group?
I think the best I can do is a C. As professional receivers, I don't think you should drop balls. Like, I've gone on many rants in this alcohol fueled and unalcohol fueled that professional athletes should not drop the ball. Professional receivers should not drop footballs. Their job is to catch the football and to run with it. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, we just talked about, had maybe 3-4 drop touchdowns. So it's tough. It's tough for me to rank him any higher. Alan Lazard had some drops. Malik Taylor's nothing to write home about. Equinemius St. Brown, like we just talked about, is not what we thought he was going to be in his year 2, year 3, whatever it is. So I think just off the talent, like the talent is just it's there, but it's not. It's not producing the talent that I think these receivers have. Just a side note on Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I've been very critical of him on the show, but I like that he played 16 games. You don't get a lot of that from receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things, like you said, about drops, it's not just like us saying you should do this. It's literally the most important thing. Like if you run shitty routes, like that sucks. But if you catch the ball every damn time, you're gonna have a job. Like that should be the one thing you focus on. Catching the ball. Yards after the catch is great, but if it's between that and a drop, you need to catch the damn ball every time.
And while you guys were talking, I did the math on drops between Lazard and MVS. So between them, when targeted, they drop 11.4% of their targets this
Too
year.
much.
That's horrible. So over 1 of every 10 passes they see, it's going to be on the ground. You can't have it. And it's always on third down. It's always in a big situation, right?
Yeah.
Like just catch it sucks. MVS can be credited to because he's a body catcher. Alan Lazard, he's a really smart guy. I think he probably overthinks everything, would be my guess.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up something quick here on Equinemius St. Brown. Do you guys remember Malachi Dupree maybe 3-4 years ago? I think Equinemius St. Brown kind of reminds me of him. I think if those two would have stayed in college another year, they might have turned out to be pretty good in the NFL.
St. Brown definitely needed to. There was no reason for him to be in that draft. He was like, his whole thing was he's a prototypical body build, like he's going to be great, but he's such a raw project. He doesn't even know what a route is, essentially, and he still may not. Like he might not. I don't know. I think he's probably still learning the offense. He doesn't seem like the smartest guy, but his dad is was a former Mr. Universe, so I'm giving him a pass. I think he can put on weight. I think he can be a good player.
Speaking of MVS, the more we talk about him, he kind of sounds like a wide receiver version of Blake Bortles. Because Blake Bortles, I mean, if you looked at him in that regular season when he won so much with the Jaguars, he was horrible. He was not good. But you put him in the playoffs, dude showed up. So is MVS maybe that kind of receiver where, like, during the regular season, you just curse his name, but during the playoffs, he turns into like a prime Megatron? It's possible. I think we need to find out again. If he does it again, I'm buying a jersey. I am buying an MVS jersey. We're getting him on the show, and him and I are going to laugh at you guys. I think that's what's got to happen.
It's kind of like
I'm not anti-MVS.
that Trevor, that whole thing you reminded me of is reminded me of when Boris Diaw was a stud in the playoffs for the San Antonio.
Yeah. At like 38.
Right.
Hit his prime. Ready to go. But yeah, okay. I guess if I graded the position outside of Devonte Adams, I'd be more critical. I'd probably go like D. I think they were good blockers, but I don't care. Like, so were the linemen, and the linemen did just as good receiving as the rest of the receiving core as well, essentially. So you talked about Agnew as a free agent target. Do you guys think the Packers need to go out and sign a big name or like a legitimate veteran number 1B to Devonte Adams number 1A? Or do you think that's a position to target in the draft? Or do you think they just need role players? Trevor, what's your opinion on that?
I think either draft or role players. But I think there is definitely a case to be made for either guys with extensive injury histories or guys who maybe just have not put it all together yet. I'm looking at Tyrell Williams. Obviously, injury history, he's had a lot. Salary, I think, is going to absolutely plummet this year. Somebody's probably going to overpay for him, but a guy like a John Ross, a guy who has just filthy, just physical attributes. I think if you can get one of those guys for cheap, like one of those type of players, yes. Outside of that, though, I mean, I feel like you can just go in the draft. I don't see anybody else. You're bringing in AJ Green, Allen Robinson. I don't really know how much that helps you as much as it hurts you with the salary cap.
Yeah, I totally agree. I believe that Josh Gordon is a free agent. That's a whole nother story. But there's a guy who's a restricted free agent out of Denver, is the guy who only catches touchdowns, and that's Tim Patrick, who I think is a stud. I would love to have him in Green Bay. I think he kind of helped Drew Lock develop a little bit this year. Other than that, you mentioned John Ross, who I loved coming out of college. Obviously, all he has is speed. So it's not much, but it's still the field stretcher. I don't think you can get – if he's going to drop the ball, it's not going to be that much worse than MVS. Otherwise, I had it pulled up here. I would love to bring AJ Green in, but, it's AJ Green. You don't know his injuries. He's probably going to still want some money because if he plays, he's probably still going to be good, with a good quarterback. A player that I've always liked is Marvin Jones from Detroit. I think he's an absolute stud of a receiver. I would like to see them maybe try him out if the money's right. But other than that, it'll be really interesting. Otherwise, just grab maybe a second round, third round receiver and, see what you can get out of that.
And the draft is pretty deep at wide receiver again. I would argue deeper than this year. Maybe not as much top end talent as this year, but I think it's just as deep. I think you could probably honestly find a starter in rounds 5, 6, 7 if you hit it. To your point for the wide receivers, I don't think they need to bring in a big name guy. I don't want AJ Green in the NFL. I don't think he's that good, but I never did. To your point about Tim Patrick, I would love Tim Patrick. 2 wide receivers in the NFL this year with 70 targets and 0 drops. Tim Patrick, Larry Fitzgerald. Both free agents. Let's bring them both in. Not that Larry Fitzgerald's any good anymore, but I like him. Bring him back to the Midwest.
We talked about that guy who to play the Tyler Ervin role. DeAnthony Thomas from the Ravens, he sat out last year, is a free agent who is a playmaker with the ball.
Yeah, that's true.
Or double down on St. Brown, take his brother Amon-Ra and say, screw it, one of you guys got to work.
True. We're going to cut one of you by the end of the offseason. Fucking work.
Maybe it'll work out like Giannis and Thanasis for the Bucks.
Yeah, maybe. Bucks are doing great. Good for them. They're trying. There's 2 players I think would work extremely well, neither of which the Packers may sign. I don't think they should. And the other, they will for sure not sign, and I think they should. Okay. So I think Corey Davis would be good. I don't think they should sign him. He's got obvious connections to LaFleur. This was the first year he's ever been a number 2 option in his entire life, and he flourished. I don't like the money that he's going to get. He's probably like a 12 to 14 million guy, and I think that's a waste of money for a player like him. Someone I would absolutely love, and there's 0 chance. It's someone who I wanted them to trade for, and it's not going to happen. It didn't happen. I would love it if they went after Curtis Samuel to be that gadget player, to be the end-around guy, to be the possession receiver in the middle of the field, because I don't think they need another deep threat. I think he could be so good. Spot Track's got a market value on here for him, I think. I can't even find him. Oh, there he is.
1.6 last year, yeah.
They're projecting him to have an average annual of 12.4. I think that you could justify that. I don't think the Packers will even think about it, which is fair. I don't think they necessarily need to. I think the draft is probably what they will and should do. We'll see how high they do it. I think they're either going to do 2 things. They're either going to take like a 7th round guy just to say, hey, we didn't punt at wide receiver again like we did last year. Or they're going to like trade up in the 1st round and reach for a wide receiver and say, hey, Aaron, look what we did for you. We had this planned all along, and it's going to be a dud. just because I don't trust him.
You guys you guys had a debate about him on our fantasy football show, but Danny Amendola is a free agent.
Yes, he is.
I think it's interesting.
I don't remember where I sided.
You were against him. I liked him.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
good. Okay, good. I was just gonna say I don't want to flip, but he sucks. I hate him.
I think he's okay.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I think there's a third option we're all missing. I think it's Dominique Daphne turning into a wide receiver. So
Yeah.
Double D, baby. The new Donald Driver.
Yeah.
Or 3 tight end sets. We can do that too.
We could. Maybe he's the jet sweep guy. I'd love to see Daphne go in motion. That would be. I think the defense wouldn't even know what to do. They just break down laughing. Let's give him like a globe motion, like bring him all the way around the backfield. Yeah. There's actually a lot of. If we did go with the role player for wide receiver, there's a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Like Demir Bird for the Patriots this year. That's an interesting name. I don't know how good he is. I think he's fine.
He was great to start. I wrote an article on him, and then he just fell off the face of the earth because Cam Newton sucks.
Yes, he does. Isaiah Ford, he's a slot guy. He could be okay. I would love Kenny Golladay. There's no chance in hell. I would love him. I don't know. He's also a guy that would play 5 games, and we're saying, oh, we could have had J.J. Watt or something, who now has a dozen teams narrowed down to get him. New team each day. It's really good race here. Anything else to say about wide receivers before we go to tight ends?
What about for another role player, like maybe someone like Mohamed Sanu?
Actually, no. I will say Mohamed Sanu's done. Like,
you think so?
Yeah, he went to the Patriots. If the Patriots bring somebody in, they're done. Like, they have zero idea how to scout a wide receiver. He was bad with the Falcons. He went to the Patriots and didn't. Like, we saw him. I don't know, man. He fell off a cliff. I thought he was going to be good. He looks done to me.
Antonio Brown just won a Super Bowl after coming off the Patriots.
A long stay off the Patriots. He didn't get. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so tight ends. Daphne signed a 2-year deal. I didn't know that. He's still on the team. But the Packers have 2 free agent tight ends right now. Robert Tonyan's a restricted free agent. It'll be interesting to see what teams offer him. And then Mercedes Lewis, again, go back to last week if you want to hear me talk about Mercedes Lewis. He's unrestricted. In my opinion, Mercedes Lewis either resigns or he retires. We'll see, though. I think the tight end position was it was top heavy, but it was pretty good for the Packers this year. Trying to get the full list in front of me here, but they had Mercedes Lewis, Robert Tonyan, Jay Sternberger continues to be another 3rd-round bust for the Packers. Josiah DeGuara is the newest 3rd-round bust for the Packers. And then Daphne, who stud, top graded receiving tight end on the team for the Packers this year. 2 targets, 2 catches, 26 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 first down. So all he does is move the chains, baby. Like, Daphne is a stud. And he's on the team again this year. Probably practice squad, but he will be on the team. Luke, I know you love Robert Tonyan. Let's throw out the scenario that I don't know what his market value is, but let's just say someone offers him $8.5 million per year. Do you think the Packers should match that?
I don't. I know I've talked him up a lot, but I think it'd be best in our interest to spend that money on a role receiver or, beef up the offensive line, defense line, whatever. I think Robert Tonyan is going to get some money from someone in free agency just because how can you look past a guy who had 10, 11 touchdowns or whatever he had, So I'm sure some bottom feeder is going to, Jaguars might try to get a weapon for Trevor Lawrence and grab Rob Tonyan, whatever. So I don't think you need to. That leaves a hole open, obviously, for that second option if, the receiver doesn't come the way that I just talked about, that Tonyan was very reliable. So that kind of puts a conundrum in what I'm saying. But I think it's still a little bit too much to keep a guy who, you know, who nobody knew until October 12th or whatever it was, you know. But yeah, like I would sure love him, love it a lot if he, you know, a little bit less than that. But otherwise, I think you let him walk it. Probably more than 5-6 mil.
I'm going to bring him up as much as I can. One, because he went to the same college as I, even though I've never met him. Dan Arnold. Look, Tunyon's gone. Dan Arnold is such a freak of nature. Like, he's one of those guys that just, like, he's what? I think he's like 6'6". Yeah, he's 6'6", 220. He holds the hurling record at Platteville, which doesn't mean much, but he shattered everything else. He's good. Like, Drew Brees liked him as a rookie, which says a lot. He looked good with Kyler Murray running around like a chicken with his head cut off, which is impressive that a tight end was able to do well. And he's going to fall down the wayside. I don't think it's his fault. I think he's gotten old Drew Brees and a not good passer, Kyler Murray, thrown to him. So if you're looking for a replacement, you know, you need somebody that's not going to be a complete bust. You know, throw him in there. You know, who knows? Maybe we're probably the only podcast that talks about the guy, so he'd probably join. You know, it's like a win-win. But you know, in all seriousness, Tunyon's probably gone, unfortunately. So I think you just have to do everything you can to get somebody that can match what he brings, which is tough. But you got to look for a guy that physically can do multiple things for the team. You know, isn't just a cinder block that can kind of run.
Right. Spot Track's got projected market values for, they don't have one for Tunyon, which would lead me to assume he will garner less money than these two players. But they have an average projected annual salary for Jonnu Smith of $8 million, and then Gerald Everett of $7.3 million. I personally think Tunyon will probably get offered more than Everett, but I think it's safe to assume, I guess, probably in the $7 million annual range for Tunyon, which is a little less than the 8.5 I said. Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, I would prefer they take that money and spend it on the defense, but will they do it? Who knows? I would welcome him back if it's cheap. Yeah, I just don't think we need to spend money on it. I also don't think Mercedes Lewis is back, even though I love him and the team loves him, and he is the best run blocking tight end in the NFL. He's a very good pass blocker. He helped out the tackles. He would be a huge help for whoever starts at right and left tackle to start the year for the Packers. I don't think he's going to be back. I think they're very convinced that Josiah DeGuara is going to be like the blocking tight end that Mercedes Lewis is. And it's way too early to judge, obviously. He played a little bit and tore his ACL, I believe, knocked out for the year. And yeah, I don't know. All you need to know about DeGuara, in my personal opinion, was his biggest draft pro from multiple people was his competitiveness, which I don't want on my fucking team. That's not a trait.
That's like when you see a 5'7" white guard in the NBA draft, and they're like, "Oh, his hustle." It's like, okay, so he sucks. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. He's a decent blocker. He made one really good block that I remember this year that he went low on a guy, but it wasn't a real block. He just chopped him. So I don't know. Could he be good? Yes. Is he a fullback H-back like they were talking about? Absolutely not. He's also not very fast. He's not a Robert Tunyon replacement, I will say. So if the Packers do not re-sign Tunyon, they do not re-sign Mercedes Lewis, I think it would be wise to get a receiving tight end. I think Dan Arnold's actually really smart. He's not a blocker, obviously, wide receiver converted to tight end, but he can be exactly what they were wishing Chase Sternberger to be. I think he could be a field stretcher. Luke brings it up all the time that Aaron Rodgers gears up and chucks it 80 yards, and they saw Robert Tunyon down the field. That's all Dan Arnold did for with Kyler Murray. I think that's an interesting name, actually. And I can't imagine he's $7 million.
And he was a receiver at Platteville. Like, he wasn't
Right.
a tight end. He was a receiver because they're like, dude, this isn't going to work. So, he has to have hands. So,
We could sign Jordan Reed and give him like incentives for every game he plays.
For every game he doesn't get concussed again. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's pretty dry. True. For some reason, I feel like people are going to overpay for him for the rest of his career.
Always.
If he's cheap, sure. I like Jake Butt. Also a great name. I'd take him.
He always finds himself onto my team in my Madden franchises, just for the Butt name alone.
Yeah. What about? He's not very good either. But Mo Alley Cox is a free agent. 28. He's not going to be coveted. I would assume he would be fine. JP Holtz.
Richard Rodgers. Bring the boy
honestly
back.
Fine. I'll take him. I will take him back in a heartbeat over some of these other players. If we're in a position where Jay Sternberger needs to take the field, it's just as bad as putting Elton Jenkins at center. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Maybe we go Jordan Reed and Tyler Eifert.
Cool.
And we just see what happens. We just let them duke it out.
Might as well trade for Jimmy Graham back too then.
Sure. Might as well. Maybe sign Zach Miller if he's still alive after he got killed by the Bears. Anything else to say about tight ends? I mean, there's not much to say. They were a good group this year.
I mean, I think they're one of the better groups with, how top-heavy tight ends are in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. We've been saying for a long time, like, the Packers need a tight end. They need a tight end that can produce ever since Jermichael Finley got hurt. It just adds something to the offense. They swung and missed on Jimmy Graham. They had why can't I think of his name?
Jared Cook.
From this Jared Cook, who was mediocre half the time, but made some big plays, and obviously he went on to be very good still. We just need someone athletic at that position, I think. And Tunyon was that. Maybe Sternberger can. Do you guys believe in Sternberger? I'm really negative, obviously. Do either of you?
Tunyon was the past. Dan Arnold is the future. That's what I'm ending on.
Yeah, you guys really swayed me off Jay Sternberger. He was my most spoiler from last week. Jay Sternberger was my most disappointing player. But yeah, if you're wearing 87 in green and gold and you're not even seeing the field, I don't think you need to be in the green and gold.
He was so bad that sportsinjurypredictor.com or whatever, because I was looking at what injury he got this year. They didn't even list an injury for him. Like, that's how irrelevant that motherfucker is. He was out the majority of the season because he's concussed. Screw that guy. I'm sick of him. That's the note we're leaving on. This is already gone longer than I wanted to. This was Lombardi Sweep. This was supposed to be positive. We're ending negative. Next week is defense. Expect a lot of negative. You can find us at the Flurry Sports YouTube channel. Follow us, subscribe to us, review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict, or Spreaker. And we will be back next week. Later.